Hey, gang. It's Molly. Happy August. Here we are. And I'm a solo pod today. I have been asked to solo pod. I love being asked to solo pod. I really do. It's one of my faves. But before I get started, I want to remind you that we are starting Camp Self Care on the 13th of August. And what is it? Good question. It is 3 videos that you get dropped on Sundays and 3 Q&A coaching with me and my dear friend Elisa Kriegel, who was on the podcast 2 weeks ago and then a month before that. And I almost hate that we're calling it Camp Self-Care because I think it's close to a misnomer. It's going to help us to address the barriers that prevent us from taking care of ourselves. And a lot of that, my friends, is the nervous system. And so our first week is about the nervous system. Our second week is about our emotions and our nervous system. And the third one is about, creating boundaries, because so often when we are dysregulated inside, we seek to control outside. And so talking a little bit about that and what's our responsibility and what isn't, and the cycles that we can get into when we are prioritizing other people, which is its own addiction in its own way. I didn't learn that in grad school, by the way. I learned that from my own treatment. And it was a wonderful and challenging thing to heal, and continues to heal. And that's the point. There's no such thing as healed, but there is such thing as working on it and giving yourself the gift of learning about your nervous system and about these things so that you can come closer. I mean, I know how it feels to just not be able to do what you want to be doing for yourself. It can get very frustrating as the owner of your own home, as the owner of yourself. And the other thing I want to say is, if you can't make the Q&As, we'll be sending around a Google form that you can send in your questions anyway. And as with all of my programs, you will get a replay of all of it that you can keep for the rest of your life. So there we have it. That's the big news. And some other big news is that in the third week of September, we are launching our all-in intensive coaching. And it's a wonderful time to do it because you'll be doing it through the big holidays, right? You'll be doing it through Halloween, you'll be doing it through Thanksgiving and right up to and right before Christmas. And what a wonderful time to get extra support and to get some well-worn snow grooves of health. And you can go to mollycarmel.com and go on our wait list. We fill that thing really, really quickly. So I encourage you. And if you're on the wait list, you get the primary spots go to people who are already in it, who love to repeat it. And the second list goes to the people on the wait list. And then the third goes to the outside public. So come and get on our wait list. We would love to have you there. And you get a free strategy call with me if you want. And I always love to have those. Actually, they're like one of my favorite parts of my job. Speaking of my job, I am having so many people, so many people ask me about the injectables, about the trend of injectable drugs that people are using, that is helping with their process, that's helping with their weight loss. And if you're not, or Ozempic, Manjaro, it's everywhere you look. And you know what I want to say to you? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm really glad. I'm really glad that I'm going to be the one to inform you on it, but many people are being bombarded. And I think if you watch any reality TV or follow anything like that, I know that some of the plastic surgeons from the show Botched are talking about Ozempic. I mean, it just seems that everybody everywhere is talking about it. And as someone who is a therapist working with people struggling in their relationship with their weight and their body and their relationship with food, I, in that part of my job, talk about it a lot because I treat a lot of people who are utilizing this intervention. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I want to say this first and foremost. I'm so fascinated by what diet culture has done to spin us asking for help, right? Like, it reminds me of the Barbie movie a little bit, right? Like, it has to be the right kind of help, and it can't be too dependent, and it can't be the, you know, I want to remind you first and foremost, completely and fully, if I do nothing else in my time knowing you, I want to remind you, number one, we are so entrenched in the lineage of diet culture. It infuses our every move. It really does. And I want to tell you, it infuses our every move, and it infuses your mother's, maybe your father's every move, and their mother, and maybe their father. I mean, this is like, it's like a diet drama, and trauma is a generational wound. And so I want to suggest, before I get into all the things that I think about these injectables, all the things that I think about this new way that people are getting help, I want to suggest that should we find solutions, right? Should we find really workable solutions? Diet culture dies. And so, of course, there's going to be this big hoopla around this, right? But I'm also really taken aback by how ashamed people are about asking for this kind of medical help, and how people don't want other people to know, and how people are making assumptions. And, first I want to remind everybody that first I want to say the greatest piece of shame that I held on to for like a lot of my life was lying by omission about having bariatric surgery. I had the same feelings that many people, I think, taking injectables have. I thought it was a cop out. I thought it was, hopping the system. Also, I want to remind you, if you're listening, I ate my way through bariatric surgery. And so medical interventions are amazing, and they're useful. And if you're not attending to your emotional and your spiritual needs, then they're just going to be medical interventions, and the emotional and spiritual needs will rile up the way that they often do, and come to get us until we go work on attending to and healing those, right? Like, I don't know that trauma cares too much about Ozempic. And so, these meds are, they're a medical intervention. They're not a spiritual intervention. They're not an emotional intervention. They're not. Though I do want to say, I mean, if you haven't noticed already, I'm largely for them. But I do want to say, for many people that I have encountered and many people I've treated, in some ways they are an emotional intervention. And I'm going to tell you why. Because for years and years and years, there are people who have super compromised endocrine systems that have been trying harder than any people I've ever seen. I mean, really, I have seen people count calories down to the one and do the and it's like not moving the needle. And they go through the proper channels, and they fit criteria, and they get prescribed these medications, and they work for them, and they feel free. And there is a lightness. It does have an emotional take on it for people. And so, I mean, I'm not saying it heals all emotions by any means, but I think there's a very validating piece for some people who take this and work, and it works to help them find some peace. It works to help them get some traction. And I want to tell you, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's everything right with that. The author Jennifer Weiner she put an amazing post. It was one of the best posts I've ever seen in my life. My friend Robin sent it to me. Thank you, Robin. And here's what she said. I loved it more than life, because the other thing that's happening, of course, is that diet culture is finding its way to capitalize on the injectables. And so Weight Watchers is involved in it, and Noom is involved in it. And Jennifer Weiner gets on Instagram, and she's like, listen, here's what I want to tell you. Now we're sure that diets don't work. Now we're certain if Weight Watchers and Noom is getting into the game of injectables, then really the deck was stacked so hard against us, because if those programs worked, then Weight Watchers and Noom would be like, you know what? We don't need to get involved in the injectables, because our like long-standing proven programs, they work. They work. So, vaya con Dios to those of you using those things. And that's not the case. They're just getting in bed, and they're getting, because diets don't work. And we know that, and we know that, and we know that. And yet we continue to make it a moral issue. And we continue to make it like we're the problem, like we're not trying hard enough. I think there are some times where we have to try differently, and we have to like get willing, and we have to surrender, and we have to really look at some of our shadows and some of our truth. But sometimes, we need the kind of intervention. Now, I want to make something like super clear. I am only, and you know what I think? It's super sad that I have to make this clear. I am not, I am talking about people who fit criteria to take these injectables. I know a bunch of people who are just unhappy with a 10, 20, 25 pounds that they're holding on to, and they're taking it. Now, like, I have my opinions about that. And I mean, I guess in my most center balanced way, I would say, that's their path and this is mine. And, I'll just eat out of my own soup bowl. But I do think there's a case to be made. Like, if you know that your body's supposed to be a different size, I'm always going to endorse that. I'm not about the body positivity, health at any size. I am if the way that I'm into it in every way in my soul is if you're into it. Like, if that's like how you feel amazing about yourself, if that's like really those learnings and those ideas make you feel good. I follow a lot of people and they are free on this. But if it doesn't appeal to you and you feel like, hey, because that happened to me. I was in a 325-pound body and I was like, this is not my body. I need to get out of this body. I need help, right? And that's when I did that intervention. That's why I did my bariatric intervention. But for people who really fit criteria for this, so I'm not a big fan of people like, with 10 pounds to lose. I think there's a case to be made that like, we're not so certain about all these side effects now. And the ones that we're certain of, they're pretty, they can be pretty extreme. And so I think if you're considering injectables, you want to be super considerate about weighing the pros and cons of everything. I know for me, I did bariatric surgery. Oh my God, so many years ago. I mean, I think I did it in the 90s. I did the bariatric surgery before they did it with laparoscopes. Like, I had open surgery for, they don't even do the surgery I did anymore. And they didn't have a lot of data yet, to be honest. It was the 90s. And I weighed the pros and cons, right? Like, I was pretty suicidal. There was no way that I was going to be able to manage my emotions and like manage my life, losing 2 pounds a week, even losing 5 pounds a week. It just wasn't going to work. And I couldn't adhere to it. I just couldn't do it. And I also do think like that suicidal piece for me was pretty important. And so weighing the pros and cons of doing bariatric surgery back then, it was like, and I think this is true today. I mean, I have significant impact from it, right? I don't make B12. I can get iron deficiency really easy. I mean, there's just a lot of things that I mean, saved my life in many ways and got me here talking to you. So it's great. But at the time, it was like not doing it was way more dangerous than doing it. And I think the case can be made for a lot of people with injectables. But the other thing I want to say is if you're considering it, can you consider it all the way? Like, what would it be like if you're going to consider this medication? Like, radical thought. If you're going to consider this medication, what if you considered it in a whole way? Like, what if you said, so I'm going to take this medication and I'm not going to be that hungry and my desire to eat is going to be less and my obsession is going to be less. And so, and I know that you lose muscle mass, right? And I know that, I have to really pay attention to what I'm eating. So I'm going to be so thoughtful and loving with what I eat. I'm going to make sure that I eat a lot, that when I eat protein and I eat fiber because that's what's recommended and that's what's going to help me with my muscle mass. And I'm going to make sure that I lift heavy weights and I'm going to check in with my doctor. And I'm also going to attend to my mental and my spiritual health if that's something that comes up, because I'm not going to treat this like a quick fix. I mean, I think there's a real case to be made that this can be a supportive tool for people if we decide that it's a tool, which it is. It's a beautiful solution. I need to say, as someone on the front lines with people who have suffered and suffered, I am watching like such beautiful freedom happen. Like for people that have like really done the work with me, I have a lot of people have done the work with me. And so they have this humility and this intentionality when they're taking these meds, and they're really finding this. It's sort of the missing piece. Now, of course, like we can bastardize anything, like, you know, and you can like eat Hershey Kisses for breakfast and mess with your insulin levels and be having diabetic dumping and, you know, have it be a really chaotic event and still be losing weight. But I don't know what kind of trade-off of a life that is. So if you're thinking about this, I want you to think about your objective and like, can you treat these as tools and heal yourself along with it? You know, have some, when I'm helping people with this, I'm always talking about like precision with your macronutrients, like maybe, you know, just really being thoughtful about what you're putting in your body. And I think for the first time for many people, this is the first time they can think about that because they've been having so much brain noise about food and all of this. And I think that that's amazing. And so the other thing that people are really up in arms about with these injectables is that there's a suggestion that you have to take them forever. And I'm of two minds. Here's my first mind. My first mind is these injectables are really one of the greatest things to happen to the disease of obesity and related causes. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? And here's what I know about America. And here's what I know about big pharma. They'll find a solution. We're just at the beginning of this. So I'm not sure we need to like all get up in a tizzy that we have to take this forever, right? As I say, forever is a really long time. I never think of anything in forever. Okay. But let's just say you had to take these meds forever. You know, nobody's getting their panties in a bundle when you have high blood pressure that you may have to be on that med for the rest of your life, right? Nobody's getting their panties in a bundle when there's lots of meds we have to be on that many people choose to be on for the rest of their life. So there's this idea, you know, like, what if it does work? And I was talking, a friend of mine called me. She's a spiritual friend of mine. And she is, you know, she struggles. Well, I don't know if she struggles with her weight, actually. I think she just is overweight and struggles with some endocrine stuff. And she went to the doctor and she called me and she kind of sarcastically said, just went to the doctor and she asked me if I wanted to go on Manjaro, which is one of the injectables. And because we know each other from a spiritual context, I think that she was supposing that I was going to be like, oh, can you believe it? That pill pusher, like what because, and also if you are a follower of my podcast, I'm pretty anti-meds. Like you've been on a lot of podcasts with me where I say like, I don't even take Advil. And so I think, you know, her assumption was I was going to be like, oh man, like run away from that doctor or whatever. But surprise, I was like, well, I don't know. Is weight release like a part of what you want out of this whole thing? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, well, like you have a really compromised endocrine system. Like these injectables are really helpful and you don't binge. And so I think you could probably manage it so beautifully. And she was like, wait, you think that like maybe I should do this? And of course, I'm like, I don't know what you should do, but I think it's like would be a really beautiful drug for you. It might be a really beautiful experience for you to consider this. Like, all I'm saying, friends, if you're someone who may benefit from this, or you know people who may benefit from this, like, and you get a big no around it, you get a big judgment around it, like, can you try to set that aside, or can you try to like evaluate that? Like, maybe it's like a beautiful thing. Maybe it's a beautiful thing to get some help. Maybe we don't really know what we're talking about. Maybe we need to set aside everything, all of these prejudices that diet culture has put into us, that the only way that, you know, it works is through grunt work and hard work. Like, I don't know. I think there's a really beautiful thing that for some people who have been struggling and struggling and struggling and never been able to find peace or solution, that there is one. And listen, again, it's a medical intervention. And I've been doing this work a long time. It's a medical intervention. And a lot of times this particular illness hits the spirit and hits the emotions. And just a side note, because we have a lot of gut health people on the show. I'm obsessed with gut health. And like, if you're on the injectables and you're not taking care of your gut by, probiotics and eating gut friendly food, which is fiber, by the way, which is one of the things that they talk about things that really make this work, then, gut health is brain health. So, a lot of people get really thin and are still miserable. I know that's hard to believe if you're struggling with your weight, but that is true. And that is true. So, what is my take on it? What's my take on the injectables? What's my take on Manjaro? What's my take on Ozempic? I mean, I think as we do in our society, it's being grossly misused and it's being used as a quick fix. But I think if you set that aside, it is also really helping people find freedom and solution that they never knew possible. And I'm excited. I mean, the people who I know that are taking it, it's changing their lives. But the people I know that are taking it in like super intentional and responsible ways. And so I would offer that to you. I would offer any intervention that you take. Can you think about doing it in a way that is a loving act instead of a magic pill? I mean, I just think that's going to bode the best results no matter what. I think it's a good rule of thumb. Do things with intentionality instead of magical thinking. I mean, that's what I'll leave you with this week. And I love you and I'm thinking of you and supporting along the way. Hey, let me know what you want me to be talking about. No one loves to answer your questions more than me. And I hope to see you at Camp Self Care. All right, gang. Bye.